What are you feeding your mind right now? If it's social media, are you tired of doom scrolling through the angry comment sections and political rants yet? What if you use that time to actually fix your marriage? Welcome to the free Married and Connected School Community. It's like social media, but without the ads, without the judgment, and without the noise. Just real self-paced tools that get you out of that roommate phase starting today. Inside, you get an exact blueprint for a weekly State of the Union meeting with your spouse. We're cutting mental load, we're stopping miscommunications, and we're breaking that exhausting loop of doom argument once and for all. Plus, you get instant access to workshops on overcoming resentment and bringing the actual fun back into your marriage. Stop scrolling the internet and start investing in your home. Click the link in the show notes and join the Married and Connected School Community today. I'll see you inside. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like roommates, but it doesn't have to feel like a war either. Hi, I'm Kameran Alareqi, certified marriage coach and a relationship expert. Every week on Married and Connected, I bring you real talk, hard truths, and practical tools you can start using right away. Whether you've been married 2 years or 42, this is where you'll find hope, encouragement, and steps that actually work. So let's make your marriage feel good again, starting right now. How often have you considered your identity in your marriage? Who you want to be, how you want to be, how you want your marriage to look, how you want it to feel. How often have you considered your intentionality in your marriage? Or do you feel like that intentionality has wavered a little bit between when you first got married versus what it is now? How about your insight? How well do you really know yourself? Do you think you're doing better than what you really are? How about intimacy? Do you ever wonder why you can't just have mind-blowing fireworks in the bedroom, but not have to pour into all of the emotions? How about integrity? Do you have it? Do you have it as well as you think you do? Well, Dr. Heidi Hastings has a PhD in human development and family studies, and Dr. Scott Hastings is a family practice physician who sees the messy parts of family life firsthand. They are researchers, educators, podcast hosts, and marriage mentors who believe that strong marriages begin with a strong sense of self. Together, they co-host the Marriage IQ podcast, blending research-based insights, real stories, and practical tools to help couples turn conflict into connection, grow their intimacy, and build marriages that last. Doctors Heidi and Scott Hastings, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. We're really happy to be with you.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's just jump right into it. Scott, as a family physician, you have noticed that patients come to you, and as you're talking, they will often confide these raw marital and mental health struggles that they have that they've never even shared with like a therapist or anything like that. So what is it about a medical exam or the medical room when a lot of people have like white coat syndrome?
Yeah.
These people are actually stepping up and telling you the difference.
That's a great question. You know, I think when you start talking about hormones, you talk about physiology, biology, you know, there's a time for that psychology to kind of creep in sometimes in that conversation, because a lot of times our physiology and biology can affect that relationship. And so the patients that are asking, they're wanting to put together these pieces of this puzzle, like, okay, you know, this is how I am, this is how my spouse is, and we're two very different people. I mean, yeah, you're right. And here's why.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different hormones going on. There's a lot of different brain processes going on. And one thing that we do with our work is we kind of break that down a little bit between male and female, like anatomy, brain differences, anatomical and other hormone differences between the two. And it is surprising how very different biological beings can exist together and make it work. It's fascinating, but it can work. And when it does work, it's magical.
Yeah. Is that kind of what led you guys to start this public education movement?
Actually, what led us to do this is my research in my PhD program. I was studying religious women who had experienced sexual betrayal in their marriage and found some really fascinating things about identity. They kept saying, I don't even know who I am anymore. I want to go back to who I was. Or towards healing, after more healing had happened, they would say, I never want to go back to who I was. I like who I am better now. I've grown, I've transformed. And so we thought, wouldn't that be interesting if we took some of the findings of my research for my dissertation and reverse engineered them to teach people about identity, to teach them about some of the other important things that women learn later in life and teach it to couples earlier before they end up in kind of crises. I think end up in crises where they don't know who they are anymore because they've let go of so much of that.
So much of that. So for my audience, it's married couples, but a lot of them are aviation spouses. A lot of them are aviation couples. Aviation, unfortunately, has this stereotype around a lot of cheating. So kind of talk about what both of you see. I know as a family physician, I mean, Scott, do you even work with a lot of pilots in your area? I don't know where are you guys located?
Well, the few I do work with, I tell my staff to clear the schedule because I can't get out of the room with them because I'm an avid airplane lover.
Okay.
And so we end up talking aviation for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I don't have very many, but the ones I do, we have a great discussion.
We're in Dallas, the headquarters of American Airlines, and and Southwest Airlines. So there are a decent number of pilots in this area.
For sure. Well, the reason I ask, Scott, is that in the couple of friends that I have that are medical providers, and also when I went in, I had to get an STD screening after finding out that my own husband cheated on me 3 different times. And the doctor was like, oh yeah, this is completely normal. Like we have I can't remember what she called it, but basically like a partnership with United. And because I was living in Houston at the time, and she was like, yeah, we see airline staff all the time. Like they're in here constantly for STI screenings. And so that's why I asked that question. But Heidi, I want you guys to dive into like what you're seeing and what you found in your research about that sexual betrayal, because a lot of these listeners are probably going to have some of that.
Well, my first question to you, if I can ask a question back, is how did you feel when that physician responded in that way? Oh, this is normal. We see this a lot.
Honestly, it made me feel better because I was like, okay, great. Like, yes, it sucks, but I think it took a lot of the shame away from it of like, oh, great, I'm not alone, which I already knew that. But at the same time, it was like, well, it happens so frequently that it was like, all right, well, if this is like, another Tuesday, then great,
That's a little bit surprising to me. And I'm happy to hear that it brought you some level of comfort. A lot of women, when they have somebody respond that way, which quite often is a religious leader or a therapist or a coach, they feel discounted. They feel like they don't matter and their pain doesn't matter. They feel like somebody else is trying to normalize something that is actually traumatic.
Yeah. No, it's very traumatic. It takes years to get through and really like not have every single thing be a trigger. So that's also why I ask about it, is that, how often are you seeing this, and how, especially for the couples that I have worked with, the identity piece is huge because a lot of them are saying, this is who I grew up as, and this is what I was taught. And now I'm finding something out that's completely different. Or they're looking at sex as like, now they feel dirty, or that even in their marriage that sex was dirty because they were so heavily infiltrated with religious beliefs and stigmas and all of that. So
that's pretty close to what I found. I think what makes my research, there are some studies out there for sure, more in the last 5 years on betrayal trauma. What made mine unique was that I had mostly Christian women, but also some Jewish women and Muslim. And so looking at, and it was lots of different ages, different races. And the other thing that makes my research unique is that I'm looking at before they even got married. What were the messages that they received from home, in church, or their place of worship that influenced their attitudes around betrayal, around sex, around who God is, around their need to submit to a man, or, the man to be the leader of the home. And I was also looking at pornography as well as part of this. And so they're added because that's typically one of the roots of most betrayal. Most men, if you start looking at healing had some kind of a history with pornography as well. So going back and looking at how those things influenced their identity and their beliefs early on actually impacted how they showed up in their marriage. It impacted the way they believed about themselves and about their marriage and their husband. And then once betrayal happened, that kind of all fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them had faith crises. A lot of them had real struggles with sexuality from that point on, and even before that. And then we took all the way through the crisis, the aftermath, the beginning of healing, and then eventually, it's totally surprising to me. I didn't expect this when I started my study, but transformation, actually.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for sure. Is your research published?
It is through Texas Women's University, and I have two. So that's my dissertation, but then I also have two published studies, one on sexuality and one on religiosity that you can find on scholar.google.com. Not the full thing, but I also have a website, drheidihastings.com, that under Betrayal IQ, under that tab, you can find copies of my research.
You recently took your teaching to Rwanda and worked with a lot of women navigating extreme poverty and trauma there. So when you took concepts like identity and intentionality into a completely different culture like this, and socioeconomic landscape too, what's like survived the journey? What did those women teach you about resilience that reshaped then how you coach the couples here back home?
I love that question so much. And actually, we're going back next month again.
That's so exciting.
We're really, really excited about this.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was walking into other than they were hopeless. They were depressed. They were often abused and impoverished. And I really wasn't sure what to do, but I always start with identity. And so when I got there, I asked the women, tell me something about yourself through interpreters. Tell me something about yourself and what your name is. And so they'd tell me their name, and they couldn't really think for a while anything about themselves. And then they started almost one by one saying, and I love to pray. And so I'm like, okay, this is the part of the identity we're going to start with, this religious piece of the identity, and let them know that even in a culture where women are not seen as important as men and they're not treated with respect, they work hard and then they turn their money over to the men, and often the men will drink the money away and they don't have money for food or clothes or education for their kids. But being able to start with identity and say, let's get back to the fact that you are a daughter of God and you have value and you are important. And then from there, we were able to build on some of the other parts like marriage and mental health, on sexuality. None of them had ever kissed their husbands. They knew nothing about intimacy. Yeah. And so we talked about some of those things, and they were shocked and surprised.
Sure.
For the part about what I learned from them, I learned to love at a deeper level. My dad passed away when I was there.
I'm so sorry.
And they would just, even with all of this hopelessness, they would dance and sing and just get their expressions out through movement. And they loved on me. It was really special.
For sure. What an incredible experience. I mean, not just for them, but also for you.
Yeah. It was life-changing, I would say, probably
for sure.
One of the most important things that I've done in my life. And I'm going to take Scott back to that same village for one day this year. We'll go to another village for part of the time, but speak to both the men and women, because the women learned a lot of life-changing things, and we left support in place for them to continue learning, but the husbands need to learn it too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Do they do a lot of arranged marriages over there, or how is it that they don't have any of that intimacy with their husbands?
I think it's just cultural. I don't notice arranged marriages. I think there may be some, I don't know, from earlier days, but it's more like probably it was in the US in some ways before the 1800s. People were married more out of convenience, and we need to have children to work the land. Love wasn't as much a reason to marry somebody as her childbearing capacity or some of the other things. This is according to some research that I've read. I don't know if everyone agrees, but it's more we're trying to survive, and the only way we can do that is to have a relationship. And I think they just believe they have to be there to serve their husbands.
How much of that do you feel like, or maybe what similarities do you feel like we as an American culture and the couples that you guys work with have with them?
Do you want to take that?
So what we have in common,
Yeah.
or what I think that, as far as the whole African culture, like they grow up just not even seeing outside perspectives. So it's really easy to just kind of fit in with the mold. And whenever there's an outside perspective from the U.S., especially with this small village, like where Americans just don't go.
Yeah.
And just to see this mind-changing, mind-boggling new information, especially about women and how they can be empowered and how men can actually help with household chores. It's just mind-boggling. They can't fathom this possibility of men doing the dishes.
Yeah.
And
or even of saying, honey, I really love you, but I'm really tired. Can we connect sexually tomorrow? Or, like there's no say in anything like that. They wouldn't dare.
Well, and even introducing the idea of romance and just the thought of kissing your husband is, so taboo.
Yeah.
They just all started giggling and like, oh no.
Yeah. And the next day I said, okay, you were challenged yesterday to go home and kiss your husband. How many did that? And they just all started laughing. No one. But one woman on the front row stood up and said, I didn't kiss my husband, but I was nicer to him yesterday. So
That's a start.
even that, like there's no emotional intimacy. There's no focus on kindness. It's just survival, really.
This kind of feeds back into I know it started with Heidi's research, but when we started really looking into it, we looked at marriage. We looked at life, first of all, from a point of view of thriving, joy. Like, isn't that what we all want? We want to thrive. We want to be happy. We want to live long. And we started doing some reading in the research literature about how marriage correlates with that and have found very, very strong positive correlation with marriage and well-being for the long term, not short term, but long term to the end of your days. The most well-adjusted, happiest, thriving people are those who can have an intimate relationship with another person for decades. And it just is shown over and over and over again in the literature. And so we've kind of made it part of our mission too, to, low-hanging fruit, to really help mankind, society, culture. And that's marriage. Somebody's got to stick up for marriage. Not just something that you do, but it's something that you can thrive at.
And grow in.
And really, really excel at living. And the research is there to support it. So that's why we're here. One of the reasons.
Same. That's why I do what I do too.
That's right.
I was actually a teacher for a little over a decade, kindergarten classrooms, and had and noticed a very vast difference between children that grew up in two-parent households that both parents were their biological parents versus children who grew up in households of divorce or even blended families. Very different.
There's a study that was done on that at, I think, University of Texas, if I recall correctly. And it was so controversial that they realized that it had gone to publication more quickly than it probably should have. And so they took it down, redacted everything. But It was really that some journals did not want that information out there.
Sure not.
That two-parent households tend to fare better for the children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had just started my coaching practice and I was kind of doing that on the side. So I wasn't even like looking at I didn't know that study existed. But yeah, I think every teacher that's truly in a classroom can see the very big difference, not just from an educational perspective, but also from a behavioral perspective, from an emotional regulation perspective. I mean,
Very interesting.
All the way that the kids attached to me versus like how they reacted when mom or dad picked up at the end of the day. That was really interesting. Like all of it was just really, really, really fascinating to me for sure.
So the 2-parent households, did they attach more to you or less to you?
Nope, less to me. I mean, they still, I was another caregiver in their life that was like, okay, you're a safe person. But the children that grew up in households that were from divorce or even blended families, it was almost like they would come in the morning and be like, oh, thank God, my safety net is here. My constant,
stability.
This is stability here, and that was, or even like, I knew exactly, I had one little guy that would come in the mornings and I always knew if he was with mom or dad because mom always dressed him in a collared shirt and his hair was always done. And when he would come in from dad's, like maybe his clothes would match, maybe they wouldn't. And this is a child that is like borderline OCD. And so he would come in and just be in tears. And I mean, this is how this child is starting his day, And so he would come in. First thing we would do, I would give him a really big hug, make him take 3 deep breaths with me. And then I always had a water bottle and I would just like pour water in my hands and finger fix his hair. And then he was fine. After he had his hair fixed, it was fine. But it was like those little things that you wouldn't even think about especially for like a 5 or 6-year-old boy, they were deal breakers on whether or not he was going to have a good day or not. So
what's really interesting about that is we see a lot, at least in people we work with and research and culture, that a lot of people invest in their children so much more than in their marriages. They kind of put their marriage on hold while they enter this parenting phase. In fact, I have one woman that told me, I don't know any woman who puts her husband above her children. And the problem is, if you're not investing in your marriage, it impacts your children
exponentially.
The most important thing that you can do for your children is to invest in your marriage. That's our opinion.
Yeah.
That's my opinion too. Honestly, I think it comes down to, though, you become like the top 5 people that you hang around with, right? So just because you don't know them, it's because you're not hanging out with them. You didn't grow up with them. Like that's, just because you don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Yeah. I've never seen, a stack of cash that equals $2 million before, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really big piece of that, and leads me to, you guys have cornerstones that you have created for life. So talk about these cornerstones for marriage.
Well, they all start with the letter I, because as we talk about identity, everything in marriage is controlled by me, myself, and I. I probably didn't say that exactly right. What's the phrase you say?
Well, identity is number one of our 4 cornerstones of a stable house. And we try to keep it simple. Identity is really where it all begins. And it begins with knowing who I am, me, myself, and I. And then we move on to intentionality, which now that I can kind of know who I am, but also realize I'm changing all the time. So I need to keep checking in with myself. Intentionality is I need to sit down with myself and my spouse, and we need to map out a roadmap, because if we're just driving with no roadmap, it doesn't end well.
And how we envision our marriage, what our future looks like together.
So we need to have those touch points along the way of this marital journey, both big and small, that we plan. And then insights is fascinating because it requires looking into ourselves and learning and changing and becoming. So you can learn your identity. You can learn how to be intentional. You can have identity. You can have intentionality. But if you can't learn from your mistakes, then you can't build this secure cornerstone of a healthy marriage. And that really requires emotional intelligence to see myself. Okay, this is where I messed up. And hey, it's okay if I messed up. It's all right. People do it. We're all human, right? But I did mess up, and this is how I'm going to change. This is how I'm going to show up next time for myself or my spouse.
Yeah, a lot of self-awareness required there.
And then, and then intimacy is a final cornerstone, which that really, it takes everything, those other 3 cornerstones, and just amplifies it, because now you're dealing with other people, another person, another intimate partner, another partner who knows and is a witness to your life, all facets of your life. And how are we going to bring that into something that becomes scintillating, not just ho-hum, not just average, but actually thriving, scintillating, wonderful, joyous? That's where that magic happens.
And then if you think about a house, like building a home you want to come home to, integrity is the last I, and that is our foundation beneath those cornerstones. Because if any of those are not built on integrity, it really weakens the foundation of the home.
100%. Absolutely agree with all of these. Going with the first cornerstone that you were talking about, identity, do you find that men struggle with a lack of identity more than women, or is it pretty equal?
Well, it's a great question. I think it depends on the person, because on the outset, it would appear that women may have a little bit harder time struggling with their identity. And there are lots of reasons for that, because they come into this world with a feminine identity, and feminine identities tend to be more deferential. They, are not, because they're bearing the children, they're not able to fight off the lion, right? So they have to rely and defer to a masculine figure. So you have that kind of inborn identity that's there. You can say it's working for you or working against you. It doesn't matter. It's there. But on the flip side, for men, it seems like, it's easier to identify as a male because I'm a man. Like, I'm masculine and I'm the guy who makes the decisions. But the problem with that is a lot of times a lot of men have deep-seated shame from whatever in their past, and they lack that identity. Even in men who are very, very sure of themselves may lack that identity, and they lack the insight to know that identity.
Right.
I think women also tend to give up part of who they are to take on a man's name and to support him sometimes through education or career paths or whatever. And then they give up other parts of their identity to become a mother. And as caretakers, often give up things that are really important to them. Instead of what we try to teach is working together as a couple to really allow each other to hang on to those important parts of identity. If that means, taking classes or having a career or hobbies or whatever it might be that allows you to really hang on to those things that are most important to you, or maybe not even most important. Family is and God are usually most important, but maybe under that, some things that make you unique, make you who you are. That way, in times of crisis, your world is not built upon an exchange principle where I'm giving away everything I am and you're giving me security and integrity. But when that crumbles, they just really lose touch with who they are, and they resent the fact that they gave up so much of themselves for everybody else. So, yeah,
but
just different kinds of identity.
If we can learn to be self-differentiated, to be strong and yet flexible, because life is filled with paradoxes, and this is one of them.
It's true.
A strong identity, that means I know who I am, but also flexible to let in someone else with different thought patterns, perspectives,
history,
and learn how to thrive with that, and actually that's necessary for thriving. I'm not going to thrive by myself. It's been well researched.
And it's rough to thrive if you've given away who you are and become a reflective sense of self.
At the same time, if you can learn, and specifically for women, because they do come in this life with that feminine identity, to learn that it is okay to be a powerhouse. You can be a CEO, you can be a rock star in the corporate world or any world that you're wanting to be in, and still maintain an identity, a feminine identity at home. It's totally different. But the difference is they know who they are, and they know when they get home, they are going to put on this different identity.
Right.
It's not bad. It's not wrong. It is allowing women to be women. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not seen anywhere in my research where women don't want to be taken care of, cherished, to be doted on, to even surrender, if you will, as part of their relationship with their husband. And that is a different identity than someone who is, out in the corporate world being a rock star, but it's possible.
I think that's where women struggle too, is that a lot of what I've seen in my own practice is that I think women want that. And then they're with a man that doesn't lead the way she needs him to, maybe because he's mimicking the identity of his own father that didn't lead well or what have you. And so she doesn't feel like she can be doted on or loved well or heard or seen or understood or, taken care of, that she has to. And I think that's where those masculine and feminine energies invert. And there's less of a balance than what is required to make a marriage thrive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I think you're right in saying women at home largely want someone to lead. And when they start to feel like maybe that leadership isn't there, they'll step in and take it, right? Because they don't want to be on shaky ground with that.
Right. It's a security thing.
Right. And it's tough for men too, because this is a really tough time for men to know, how am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be the strong leader? Am I supposed to be sensitive and emotional and vulnerable and authentic? And the answer is yes.
Yes. Yes.
All of that.
It. Yes. And.
Yeah. And it's a fine balance. And many men have never learned how to be emotional, have never learned how to be vulnerable. I remember the guy sitting on my couch when we were telling him vulnerability is helpful for connection in a marriage. And he's like, no, vulnerability is weakness.
I hear that so frequently.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's a rewiring of their brain. I mean, you're literally rewiring what's been taught maybe for generations.
Right.
That's really difficult. Man, I could sit here and talk to you guys about these pillars all day long. I love the identity part. The intentionality is something that I teach constantly as well. Insight, I mean, without self-awareness, like how are you? And I think to touch on this a little bit, I think one of the things that I am seeing more and more lately, this idea that I think a lot of it is pride, but I think a lot of it is also, and maybe fits into the pride part, but as human beings, we think we're doing better than what we really are. And so we want to believe that we're a great spouse. We want to believe, and in both sides of the street, not just men, not just women, but this idea that, we are a great parent or we are a great spouse. And then we have the spouse or these children that, the children are running amok or having behavioral issues. And then we've got this spouse that's like, actually, no, you've got this, and this that I could really do with you having better at, Well,
I think we're all the hero to our own story. I think that's naturally how we come. And so is lower level development. And as somebody who studied human development and specifically how that can change over the lifespan, 60% of adults never reach a developmental level above that of a 14-year-old. And in that developmental level...
Say that again. 60% of adults never reach
the developmental level of that above a 14-year-old. So when you're about 14 to 16, you do what you do to be accepted. You do what you do to belong, but you don't really have any self-awareness of what you're doing and how that's impacting other people. So again, you're being the hero of your own story and you think what you're doing is right and what your partner is doing is wrong, which is contempt, which according to John Gottman will drag a marriage to death. It really takes, in my mind, two different paths to learn to be more emotionally intelligent or to have higher level of human development. And that is one, learning and taking your own agency, making decisions for yourself instead of relying on what everybody else says, looking at all the options and taking control of your own life. Or number two is crisis. And not everybody who goes through a massive crisis, it becomes transformed, moves to those higher levels of development where they are using their agency, where they are seeing things through different lenses, where they are seeing their own weaknesses. But those who can take tragedy and make it into just something really beautiful. So a lot of people don't take the time to want to learn. about marriage, about human development, about emotional intelligence. They just live their lives. They're watching Netflix. They're on social media. They're at their kids' ball games. They live their lives belonging to circles that they run in without making making very few of their own decisions. Just kind of groupthink.
And even then, people who live very intentional lives without insight, they can plan stuff, but without knowing, hey, I'm delusional. We're all delusional. It's fascinating how delusional we really are. And jump in, the water's warm, right? Like, we're all delusional. That kind of takes the sting out of it. But just learning and not being shamed over it or not feeling this toxic guilt over being delusional. Just like, hey, okay, this is what it is. Nothing more, it's nothing less. Let's jump in. Let's dive in. Let's see how we can learn what I'm missing. What am I missing here? And that's that. You're well on your road. Now you can put that with intentionality, and you can really start getting some scintillating moments together.
And this is identity development.
Yeah, for sure. Man.
And really cool when you do it together.
Okay, so that leads me to my last question for you guys here. So you're running a medical practice, you both have PhDs, you're managing small businesses, you're raising 4 kids over 30 years. You've had massive operational demands on your schedule, which a lot of people could use as an excuse. What practical boundaries or rules or intentionalities have you guys had to prevent your marriage from turning into that high efficiency logistics enterprise?
That is a loaded question.
So I would say there are 3 answers to that: weekly date night, couples council every Sunday, and quarterly marriage retreats. So we could spend hours unpacking each one of these. Yeah.
But basically what we do is, you're right. We get together every Sunday for our couples council. And we go through the week, we talk about it, we talk about, hey, this is where I feel like, you did something really well, I did something well, she tells me, we talk about our goals. The marriage retreat is every 3 months, and that's like a big kind of a conference. We do not do it in the house. We go elsewhere.
2 or 3 days. And
it makes a difference. You get out of the house. It makes you think differently. And, and then of course these daily, well, she mentioned weekly dates. We do have daily touch points too, to just bring it back together. Boom. We're turning toward each other all the time, turning toward. And that's what makes a difference.
Yeah. And those marriage retreats that we do, we start out with looking at our 1-year vision, our 3-year vision, our 5 to 10-year vision. And then our goals are built by who we want to be in the long term. So we set goals, and then we follow up at the goals at our couples council. So it goes both ways. Our intentionality goes both ways. We look at who we want to be, and then we plan weekly, and then we plan daily based upon that vision. And then it goes the other way. And to be honest with you, we had on our vision of who we want to be humanitarians. And we had for 3 or 4 years on there that we wanted to do some kind of a humanitarian mission, which led us first to Tanzania and then Rwanda and now back to Rwanda. That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have been super intentional about everything that we're doing.
But how often do people even ask that question of, who do I want to be? How do I want my marriage to look? Who do we want to be together? Like all of that. That
not nearly enough.
Yeah, not nearly enough. I know. I see the same thing.
And if you want, we can give you a couple of our podcast episodes that you could link in your show notes if people want information on any of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it makes a difference. We are who we are 10 years from now if we slide and just be who we are by watching Netflix or doing whatever, or we can be really intentional about, I want to make a difference in the world. I want my marriage to be really tight. That doesn't mean it's that way 100% of the time, but that means if we're having these quarterly marriage retreats, we can say our marriage is a little off base right now. What do we need to change to make it come back together to be how we want it to be?
Did you guys do that even when the kids were little?
Yeah, we started
I think about 2008 or 7, something like that. So almost 20 years now.
Well, and of course, we've been refining everything.
Yeah, the date nights always from all 30 years of our marriage. Yeah.
Every week.
And we don't talk about kids or work, or we try to not talk about kids or work. We have to remind each other.
No kids.
Okay. So if you're listening to this, there you go. 4 kids and married 30 years. And this is the secret. You gotta make it happen. I love that. Thank you guys so much for being on today. We will definitely be having you back. And we just appreciate all of your insight. Good luck in Rwanda next month.
Yeah.
Definitely safe travels. We'll be praying for that for you guys. Thanks so much for being here.
And thank you for the work that you're doing, especially in the aviation families, because we know about the golden age era of flight, and, it had some really wonderful things about it, and it set a precedence for some tough things. And so kudos to you for setting a stage that allows those couples to prioritize their marriages.
Thank you. Tell everyone where they can find you, get more information. You guys have a podcast as well.
Yeah. So our podcast is Marriage IQ, and we have a marriageiq.com website where you can sign up for weekly tips. And every week we send out a little email. It takes about a minute to read with an action tip on how you can have a better marriage that week. And we're on social media as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All of that information will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for having us.
This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional counseling or therapy. Every couple story is unique, so take what's helpful and leave the rest. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that neither I, Kameran Alareqi, Married and Connected, or Recognizing Potential Coaching are responsible for any outcomes related to what you apply from this show, especially if you are not a client of mine.